Okay. So users, let us understand what a user actually means here. Every user is identified by a username, a password, and a single profile. Now profile is what contains all the permissions that a user has, right? So I'll talk about the profile a little later. Let us understand that every user is identified by a unique username and password. Okay. The profile determines what tasks, so username, password we understand. Let's understand what is this profile. Profile determines what tasks user can perform, what data they see, and what they can do with the data. So number one, what task they can perform on Salesforce. Secondly, what data they see, and the third thing is what they can do with the data. So what they can do with the data will mean, can they edit the data, can they see the data, can they delete the data, can they create new records. So that is what they can do with the data. Okay. So viewing and managing users is pretty simple. You just have to go to setup. So we go to the setup menu, and then in the left hand side menu you have a manage users option. You just have to go there, click on users, and then from there you can add users. Adding a single user, you just have to click on new user. You can also add multiple users by clicking on add multiple users option. So both these options are available for adding users. So let's quickly go and see how to add users in Salesforce. You just have to go to setup, and in setup you have to go to manage users, and then you have to click on users. Okay. Screen as well. So here it is. You just have to either click on new user, as I told you. You just need to go to the setup, manage users, either click on a new user or add multiple users. Okay. So if you want to add multiple users at one time, you just need to say add multiple users. If you want to use one user, click on new user and your user will be added. So click on a new user. Fill in all the mandatory fields, the first name, last name, alias, email ID, username, nickname, title. Okay. Select a profile for the user. So as of now, you can just pick any license or pick any profile. Gradually you will understand, that is what we are going to discuss in these sessions today and tomorrow. So after that you will understand what is this, relevance of selecting a profile and all. So this is how a user can be created, right? So this is simple. The other option that you have is you just go to the manage users and add multiple users. So when you add multiple users, you have the option of putting multiple names, first name, last name, and then you can create them the way you want. All right. So that is how it is. So multiple users will show this kind of an option for you. Okay, and then you can add more users. So new user number 9, number 10. That is how it needs to be added. Now you don't have to worry a lot about adding multiple users, because that is a rare scenario. Even the biggest of the companies do not add users in bulk. They add it one by one, so most of the time. So this is a very rare scenario. Just wanted you to know this option. All right. So Adding user is fine. There are few things that I would want to share with you on the users. The same way as you added user, you can always go to setup, manage users and edit the user. So in case you feel like editing some information of any of the users, you can go to edit and edit that information. For example, you want to change someone's email ID, first name, last name. As an administrator, you can go and do that, right? Okay. A few important things, points to keep in mind. The username must be unique across all Salesforce organizations. So your username that you're using has to be unique across all the Salesforce orgs. I mean, across the globe, it should be a unique username for Salesforce. And that's pretty logical, right? Like my Gmail account has to be unique, like my Facebook account name has to be unique. Same way, the username of Salesforce also has to be unique because this is a big disk login, right? So it cannot be a duplicate username. Not within your org, across all orgs, it has to be unique. Okay. It must use this format of an email address, but doesn't need to be a real email address. So your username has to be in the form of an email address, but it does not have to be an email address. That's correct. So the format should be of email, but it can be something else also. So it does not have to be the real email address. Third point is you cannot delete a user. Okay. So once you've created a user, there is no option of you deleting a user. You can never delete. So Salesforce does not give you the option of deleting a user. Any user once created will stay there. Okay. Now you might be thinking that if I create a user and if that user leaves the company, we might need to delete that, right? So that we can use that license for someone else. So what you have to do, you don't have to delete the user, you just will deactivate the user. You can deactivate a user. So once you deactivate a user, okay, then what will happen? That license, that user will not consume any license. The license will become free again. You can add one more user and put the license there. Now, what is the logic behind Salesforce not allowing us to delete the user? It's a very simple logic. There is a lot of data which is related to a user. You have seen that for every data we have an owner, right? So once there is a user created in the system, that user can own a lot of data into the system, right? Let's say we talk about Avinash. Avinash joins the company. Okay, we are a company. Avinash joined us, last year. In last 1 year, he must have worked on a few accounts, opportunities, cases, a lot of things that he has owned, right? He must have done some good things. He must have done some bad things. Now he must have generated some revenue for the company. He must have got some escalations on the cases, right? So there are there's a lot of data which is actually allocated to him. Now, if I try to delete Avinash as a user, I have to either assign all that data to someone else or something like that, right? Which does not make sense. The case that came to him, that case that he resolved, why should we assign it to someone else? After 6 months, that should not be the case, right? That if you go back and see that who resolved this case or who made this mistake, it should always show his name only, right? It should not show someone else's name. Maybe he has made a mistake where he was supposed to get a big deal of 2 million. He did not convert it. If you convert, transfer that opportunity to my name, after 3 months again, if the company is doing a reporting, they will blame me for that thing which I never did, right? So to avoid these kind of things, users are never deleted from Salesforce. Whoever was the user, that user will be there. All the data which was associated to that user, let it be associated with that user. The cases, the opportunities, the accounts. Sometimes if you feel like transferring some of the data, you can transfer the data, but most of the things should be there with the user. That's it. Fine. Now let's understand securing data access. So we have understood the user part, creating, editing, deleting users. Now let's understand the securing of data access. So as I told you that we are going to talk about the data access or the security access control at every level, right? That is what I told you. So that is the thing that we have to deal with here. First is object level security, permission sets and profiles. Okay. You can prevent a user from seeing, creating, editing or deleting any instance of a particular type of object such as a lead or opportunity, right? So you can prevent a user from seeing, creating, editing or deleting any instance of a particular type of object such as a lead or an opportunity, right? So object level security basically defines whether a user can create, edit or delete records in an object. So this is the security level at an object level. Okay. And this is defined using permission sets and profiles. The next thing is field level security. So again, field is one more component that we have talked about. You might need to control permissions at that level also. So sometimes you may want users to have access to an object but limit their access to individual fields in that object. So sometimes you might want other users to see the object but you do not want them to see the field in that object. For example, one field, email ID. You want the user to see the complete contact object but you don't want them to see the email ID. Or you want the users to see let me say, yeah, contact information, but you don't want them to see the social security number, something like that, right? So if there are some fields which are, which you don't want to share with the users, you need to put field level security there. Field level security control whether a user can see, edit and delete the value for a particular field on an object, right? So field level security will control only for the value of the field. However, this object level security is for the entire record. Okay. Then the record level security. Record level security means sometimes you may want to configure access settings for the actual record themselves. Okay. So sometimes you do not want the users to access some of the records. Let's say you don't want me to access Abdul's records because we are two different people. He is working on his cases, I am working on my cases. So you don't want me to have access to Abdul's records. I have access to the cases object. I can see the cases object, but you don't want me to see those records that are not owned by me. Very much logical again. That is a valid requirement. Sometimes you don't want people to see others' records, because that can again lead to confusions and all that stuff. Rather, keep things limited to the owners. You don't want others to access, the record of a particular user. That's absolutely fine. So that is record level security. Record level security lets you give users access to some object records but not others. Fine. So there are three things that we are talking about here: object level security, field level security, record level security, right? Controlling the access to the object, controlling the access to the fields, and controlling the access to the records. Now for field and objects, we control them using these two things: permission sets and profile. These are the tools. And for record level security, we control it using sharing. So these three things you need to keep in mind: profile, permission set, and sharing. Okay, so we'll talk about these in details. Okay, so let us understand the user permissions and access. User permission and access settings specify what users can do within an organization. So this determines what a user can do within an organization. Okay. Specified in user profile and permission sets. So user profiles and permission sets are where these are defined. So I told you earlier, right, that a user will have a login ID, a password, and a profile. So the profile consists of all these user permissions. Every user is allowed only one profile but can also have multiple permission sets. So what permissions are controlled through profiles and permission sets? Number one, the apps that the user will get to see, assigned apps. Tabs, which tabs the user will get to see, that is also controlled on the profile. Just skip this permission set part now. Yeah, so the permissions that we are talking about, which are controlled through a profile, let's not think about permission set, just forget about permission set right now. Just think about permission and access through the profile. The profile part that we were talking about, let's understand that only. So profile basically controls the assigned apps, it controls the tabs which are available to the user. It also controls the record type assignment, what type of record the users will get to see, right? Page layouts, what page layouts, so page layouts and stuff we will do a little later, but page layout is basically controlling what kind of a page will the user get to see. That depends on the profile. So you can design different pages for different users. For some user you can have a page where you put all the fields. For some user you can have a page where you put fewer fields. So that sort of things can be controlled. Object permissions, so object level security that we were talking about. Field permissions, the field level security that we were talking about, that is controlled through profile. User permissions, so what users can do on the system, right? So apart from these permissions, what the user can do, like is he an administrator, can he go and edit some other user details and all that stuff, that is what is given. Apex class access, Visual Force page access, so this is the programming side of it. So the access to the coding, access to the Visual Force, and then desktop client access. Desktop client access means anything like a data loader kind of thing. If access to that thing can be given through this permission sets, profiles. Okay, anything. Any application which is to be installed on your local computer and then used. So that sort of application access. Fine. So this is what we have in our profile. So these are the things which are controlled through the profile. All right. And login hours and IP ranges also can be defined through profile. In addition to these things, login hour and IP range define which time the user can log in, during which time of the day the user can log in. So that thing can be controlled, and that is also controlled through profile of a user. So basically what a user will be able to do on Salesforce, what he will not be able to do, everything is controlled through the profile. Okay, so profile has all the things. Only one thing that is not covered here in the profile, that is the records access. What records you can access and what records you cannot access, that is not covered in your profile. So rest all other permissions, what apps you will see, what tabs you will see, what fields you will see, what fields you can edit, what fields you can delete, what page layout you will see, what time you can log in, everything is in profile. So that is a simple logic. You just have to keep one simple logic in mind. Only the record access is not controlled in profile. There are a few more things which are not controlled in profile and they are controlled through some other thing, but that is something which you will eventually understand. At this point of time, you just have to keep a very simple understanding. See, you don't have to be confused between so many things. If you try and remember so many things, you might not be able to answer your certification exam questions or interview questions properly. I will tell you a small trick, just keep this in mind. Only the record level access is something which cannot be done through profile, rest everything is done through profile. Just keep this in mind. Now if I come to you and ask you that I want to restrict a user I want to restrict certain app from a user. How do I do that? Your answer should be through profile. I come and ask you how I want to restrict a certain tab from a user. How do I do that? Your answer should be profile. If I ask you I want to restrict certain records from a user, how do I do that? Then the answer should not be profile. The rest everything should be through profile. Got this thing clear on this? So profile is basically a user's complete collection of permissions that the user has, right? So every user has a profile. Alright. So we will learn how to create a profile and how to put permissions in the profile. That is something that we will do in our tomorrow session. But today, please tell me if you are all clear on